Discovered. When I surprised my son, I never expected to find this incredible person by his side. James's heart raced as he pulled into the school parking lot, the engine of his old pickup rumbling to a stop. It was just another Wednesday, but this day felt charged, electric with anticipation. The scent of stale coffee still clung to his hands, reminders of a long day at the shop where he toiled relentlessly, fixing wrenches and engines in the flickering light of his father's legacy. Yet all he could think about was Kyle. What if this surprise sparked something in his son, something that propelled him out of the quiet corners of his mind? He wiped the grease from his forehead and took a deep breath. Pride swelled within him. Every ounce of sweat and hard work was for Kyle's future. The image of his son's shy smile filled him with hope, but doubt crept in uninvited. Would Kyle ever truly connect with his peers? Would his interests in analytics and research ever lead him to firelit conversations, or destined solitude? As he stepped into the bustling hallway, the cacophony of student chatter wrapped around him like a heavy blanket. He searched for Kyle, imagining the two of them in a moment of shared dreams, but a twist of fate awaited him. James froze. There was Kyle, standing with Dr. Emily Carter, the psychologist known for her deep understanding of emotional struggles. The two spoke earnestly, and a wave of conflicting emotions surged through James. Pride clenched his chest as he observed Kyle animatedly discussing his aspirations. That rare shimmer of light in his son's eyes unfurled a complex mixture of joy and confusion in James's gut. Dr. Carter, with her polished demeanor and credentials, had a warmth that radiated hope, qualities James yearned for but felt he lacked. The man who changed tires for a living suddenly felt like a fish out of water, overshadowed by a world of academia. What could he possibly offer Kyle that they didn't? As he approached, Dr. Carter glanced in his direction, and Kyle's face broke into a grin, but James's heart sank. Was it envy that twisted inside him? Seeing his son connect with a figure outside their modest life twisted the knife deeper. Kyle's dreams differed from his own, dusty hands changing tires and oil, research in psychology. The thought made his chest tighten. What if they think I don't belong here? The self-doubt festered, and the weight of his working-class identity loomed larger. Before they could acknowledge each other, James's attention snapped to a paper that fluttered from Dr. Carter's clipboard. His breath caught as he recognized his mother's handwriting, notes about her aspirations, plans to support struggling children. Legacy entwined with loss, he felt the burden spread across his shoulders, the guilt of an unachieved dream, the unfortunate reality of his existence shadowing the brilliant potential of his son. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. James stood there, frozen, watching as misunderstandings bubbled just below the surface. He felt his chest tighten as he envisioned the struggles they faced. Could he bridge this divide? Doubt reared its head. Did they even want him to? The conversation began turning sharp, words heated yet unvoiced, flickering like faulty lights. Every moment that passed stitched invisible threads of tension between them. As the social chasm widened, the weight of expectations loomed heavier, and James was left questioning. Was it his fault that Kyle yearned for something beyond what he could offer? Would he forever see his son's hope dim, eclipsed by his own insecurities? With unuttered questions hanging in the air, he knew he stood at a precipice, a choice that could define their futures. How could he keep this relationship whole amidst the fractures of their past? James blinked hard, trying to dispel the fog of confusion in his mind. The conversation between Kyle and Dr. Carter played out like a scene he wasn't meant to witness. His son's face, illuminated with passion, chased away the shadows of doubt that had been gathering for years. Yet, each spirited word Kyle uttered held a mirror to James's own unresolved issues, a harsh reflection of his perceived inadequacies. Panic surged. What could he say to Kyle now? How could he connect with a boy who might one day sit in a lecture hall discussing theories that seemed impossibly distant from the realities of their life? His hands clasped tightly together, a physical manifestation of the emotional turbulence rocking inside him. Without thinking, he took a few steps closer, compelled by some force he didn't fully understand, until he was standing just a few feet away, eavesdropping on the vision of Kyle's dreams. Dr. Carter shifted slightly, her eyes meeting his, a silent acknowledgement that almost shattered the barrier isolating them. "James!" Kyle exclaimed, his voice bright as a bell. "I was just telling Dr. Carter about my idea for the school's psychology club." James felt every pair of eyes in the hallway sketching judgment upon him. "Right," he croaked. The familiar constriction in his throat returned, a reminder of all those moments he felt out of place, unworthy. "The club sounds like a good idea, buddy." Dr. Carter smiled encouragingly. "Kyle's insights are impressive. He has the potential to lead meaningful discussions. It's wonderful he has a passion for psychology." James shifted uncomfortably, wishing for a way to articulate the pride blooming fiercely in him, while acknowledging the gulf between who he was and what everyone expected. All he wanted was to be part of that dream, to be the father who inspired, the one who didn't fade away in the background. "Will you help me with it, Dad?" Kyle's question rang sweetly, yet it posed a challenge that unnerved James like the unsteady vibration of a loose engine part. "I want to discuss how we can support students who struggle emotionally. I thought you might have ideas from your experiences." A wave of relief washed over him even as anxiety stormed back. Kyle sought him out, his presence mattered. But as fleeting self-acceptance anchored him, a fork in the road emerged. Should he share his own experiences, or risk exposing vulnerabilities to a son whose ambitions were light years away from his own? "Of course I can help," James stumbled out, trying to find a thread of authenticity within the words. The moment an idea formed in his mind, a will to ensure Kyle's aspirations weren't hindered by his father's trepidations, he stiffened. He could plan a way to show his support, yet what resources or wisdom did he truly possess? "Maybe we can hold meetings at the shop?" James proposed, his gaze falling to Kyle's earnest eyes which sparkled with hope. "Use my tools for breakthroughs, perhaps?" Suddenly, Dr. Carter interjected, her voice a lifeline. "Actually, creating a project incorporating both of your worlds could unite different insights. Psychology and mechanics can teach resilience and understanding in unique ways." James's chest tightened again, not with fear, but with a flicker of revelation. Could it be that vulnerability wasn't an end, but a beginning? Perhaps embracing his narrative as a mechanic, flipping the script to show how practical skills translated to emotional resilience, might truly bridge the cavernous gap he feared. The bell rang, jolting him from contemplation. While students filtered past them, he caught a glimpse of Dr. Carter's approving smile. But uncertainty loomed large once more. The how-to's of engaging Kyle in this grand plan were still tangled amidst distressing confusion. "I think it's time for class," Kyle murmured, a hint of disappointment dimming his bright demeanor. "Let's meet after school to brainstorm?" James suggested, determination flickering anew. As his son hurried to catch up with his peers, a sense of urgency compelled James. This was the moment to confront the growing distance and step beyond what he thought he knew about being a father. It was high time to redefine failures and shape their future. However, a chilling thought struck. What if his aspirations crumbled under the weight of expectation? As he trudged back to his vehicle, doubt gnawed at the edges of his ambition. Would he be enough? The path forward loomed ahead, brimming with uncertainty and potential. James knew he stood at the threshold of something transformative. But was he ready to face the storm that may follow? He needed more than hope, he needed a plan. And as thoughts whirled in chaotic formation, one question pierced the haze. Would he discover the strength to rise between his son's dreams and his own turbulent past? The answer felt an eternity away. James sat in his truck, staring at the keys dangling from the ignition as the world outside the window blurred past. His heartbeat echoed in his ears like a hammer striking steel, each pulse reminding him of the stakes laid bare against the backdrop of his son's expectations. He realized he couldn't simply return to his old routines. He needed to engage both Kyle and himself in a way that felt authentic. Driving home felt almost surreal. The familiar roads twisted beneath him, but his mind was elsewhere. He contemplated the conversations he and Kyle might have, the very conversations that had eluded him but were now ripe with possibility. Each intersection was a metaphorical point of decision, forcing him to confront his fears of inadequacy not just as a father, but as a man shaping his own legacy. As he pulled into the driveway, he noticed a few tools scattered across the workshop. It struck him how those simple objects held stories of labor and learning, scars of trials faced and overcome. Could he draw on those experiences to scaffold the connection with Kyle? The question unsettled him, feeding his doubts. He entered the house, the smell of dinner wafting through the air. His wife, Helen, looked up, her smile warm yet tinged with concern. "How'd it go at school?" she asked, slicing vegetables methodically, each cut precise. "Good," he replied, though doubt colored his tone. "Kyle has this idea for a psychology club, and he wants my help." Her eyes lit up, but she quickly tempered her enthusiasm, sensing his hesitation. "That sounds great, James. You should be proud." "Yes, looking up to you." Pride felt foreign, a distant echo of something he'd never truly grasped. What if I disappoint him? What do I even bring to the table? Helen paused, leaning her knife against the counter, her expression shifting from concern to gentle reprimand. "You've got more to share than you realize. Think about what you've built in this workshop. It's not just about mechanics. It's about problem-solving resilience. Show him how those concepts translate beyond tools." Her words hovered in the air, slowly tightening around his perception of himself. For the first time, he saw that his experiences, the sweat and toil of manual labor, could impart valuable lessons about life itself. Maybe I could do a demonstration, something relevant to his theme of emotional support. He mused aloud, brainstorming possibilities as his mind sparked with ideas. There are methods to repair machinery that parallel the repair of emotional damage. As he pictured the workshop filled with students, tools in hand, an unexpected thrill surged through him. He envisioned sessions where they could discuss mechanics solving a problem, mending a broken part, and relating it back to coping with personal challenges. This could be a way of redefining not only what it meant to connect with Kyle but also what it meant to embrace his story. Feeling a surge of energy, he grabbed his phone and began drafting an outline of what these meetings could look like. His fingers flew over the screen, connecting thoughts that had lingered too long without resolution. But then a weight descended upon him. The fear of not living up to that potential loomed large. What if the students laughed at his attempts to blend the two worlds? He could almost hear the clanging of judgment echo in his mind. Just as he was about to close the app, a message pinged. Kyle asking what time they could meet at the shop. A simple inquiry, yet it felt monumental. James's heart raced again as he realized this was not just about supporting Kyle or facing his fears. It was about forging a relationship grounded in honesty and opportunity. "I'll text him back," he said resolutely. "Let him know we're meeting tonight." In that moment he understood that his journey wouldn't be easy, nor would it be linear. There would be setbacks and perhaps even failures. Still, he was ready to embrace the unfolding path ahead. As the evening settled in, James prepared for the gathering with Kyle, excitement intermingling with nerves. Each step toward that workshop felt like stepping onto a stage, and he was finally ready to perform, not as an inadequate father caught in his past but as a mentor forging a new future. Yet, just as he was about to lose himself in anticipation, a looming thought skittered through his mind. What if Kyle's expectations exceeded his own abilities? Would he find strength or falter beneath the weight of uncertainty? As he glanced out the workshop window, the evening darkness looming beyond revealed one undeniable truth: change was coming, and he needed to be prepared for everything it would bring. James stood at the workshop's entrance, his heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and dread. Night had fallen, and the dim light flickering from the overhead bulb illuminated a space laden with memories. This workshop was where he had honed his skills, where sweat and effort had cemented his identity in the tangible world of screws and bolts. But tonight it would also serve as the backdrop for a potential breakthrough in his relationship with Kyle. The sound of footsteps broke his reverie. Kyle entered, a canvas bag slung over his shoulder, eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Hey Dad, ready?" The eagerness in his voice sent a wave of warmth through James. It reminded him of the boy he once was, curious and unmarred by expectations. "Absolutely," James replied, grateful that his voice didn't betray the trembling uncertainty beneath. A fleeting moment of awkwardness passed between them, but it dissolved when James gestured toward the workbench. "So, I was thinking we could use some of our tools to explore how they relate to mental well-being. Like using mechanics to explain emotions?" Kyle asked, surprise lighting up his features. "Exactly. Think about it like this," James started, feeling a smile creep onto his face. The more he spoke, the more the conversation flowed. When something breaks, it needs observation before it can be repaired. The same goes for our emotions. If we don't take the time to understand what's wrong, we can't move forward. Kyle considered this, his brow furrowed in thought. That actually makes a lot of sense, Dad. Encouragingly, James picked up a wrench, feeling the familiar heft in his hand. Let us take this apart. Not just to fix it, but to figure out how each piece fits into the whole. Much like how we work through our feelings. With that, they dove into the lesson. James felt a surge of purpose as Kyle engaged with the task. Questions sprang forth like new ideas in a brainstorming session. So, if we apply this to someone feeling lost, what would the tools be that they need? Tools of support, James chimed in, facilitating the flow of dialogue. Listening, empathy, understanding things that frame a conversation rather than sharp edges that could cut. As they disassembled and reassembled parts, James noticed the glimmer of insight in Kyle's eyes and unguarded excitement that mirrored his own. In that moment he grasped something profound. Wasn't this training session more than just a workshop demonstration? It was both a metaphor and methodology, a bridge to understanding complex emotions. The atmosphere shifted, lightening the tension that had previously clouded their exchange. James felt lighter, more visible. But as they moved deeper into the exercise, he faced a sudden jolt of self-doubt. The conversation turned heavier as Kyle's initial enthusiasm transformed into a concern that rocked James's confidence. Dad, what if I'm not good enough at leading this club? What if it all falls apart? James paused, confronted by an inherent vulnerability he recognized in his son. He felt an urge to deflect the fear, to assure Kyle that everything would be easy. But instead, he leaned in, echoing the very lesson they had been discussing. We're all learning, Kyle. It's okay to feel unsure. What matters is using that uncertainty as a tool to build something meaningful. Kyle nodded, a contemplative look crossing his face. So, the more I practice at this, the better I'll get? The angle of the workshop's light flickered over their faces, metaphoric shadows forming as the dialogue deepened. James sensed a crack of possibility widening. Maybe Kyle wasn't just searching for guidance. He was reflecting the courage James lacked in his own path. This realization shifted something inside him, a lesson in reciprocity. After the session closed, Kyle surveyed the workshop. That was great, Dad. I actually feel excited about this now. James couldn't help but grin. Another breakthrough had been made. Yet, as they wrapped up for the night, the warm glow of connection dimmed under a new concern. Another layer of complexity unfolded. With the growing reality of Kyle's expectations, he wondered whether he could rise to meet them. Still, before they made their exit, Kyle asked, "Are you coming to the first club meeting?" Caught off guard, James hesitated. The thought of standing in front of a group, vulnerable and laying himself open to scrutiny, sent a chill through him. Yet he felt a burgeoning resolve alongside the fear. "Yes, I will," he affirmed quietly, yet with determination. As they stepped outside, leaving the workshop behind, a brilliant flash of light burst across the sky, unexpected and breathtaking. James watched in awe and uncertainty, aware that this was more than just an illuminating display. It was a declaration of what was yet to come. Behind his thundering heartbeat, a different rhythm emerged. It spoke of hope and potential. The closer he drew to Kyle's aspirations, the more he realized that facing his own insecurities was now imperative. What he didn't fully grasp was how soon he would need to confront the looming judgment of others, and whether he could safeguard not only his journey but also Kyle's emerging vision. As they headed inside, the question nagged at him. Could he be the mentor both of them needed? James' fingers tightened around the cool metal of the door handle as they stepped into the club meeting room the following evening. Nervous energy coursed through him. Each beat of his heart synced with a whirlwind of doubts. He was an outsider here, stepping into the role of mentor. What if he messed this up? The room buzzed with chatter, teenagers mingling with a carefree confidence he wished he could generate. Kyle's enthusiasm radiated as he filled the space with ideas, gesturing animatedly while his peers listened, nodding their heads in agreement. It filled James with pride. This was the boy who once hesitated to share his thoughts, now blossoming with leadership. But as James sat in a corner, an inkling of fear crept in. He feared not being enough to bolster Kyle's ambitions. "All right, everyone, let us settle down." Kyle's voice cut through the noise, and the group slowly hushed, turning their attention to him. James leaned forward in anticipation, sensing that this was the moment when Kyle would truly shine or face the potential of crumbling under pressure. Kyle's eyes darted toward him, a moment of reassurance intertwining with his uncertainty. "My dad is here to help us out today, and I think he has some cool ideas." A speck of panic fluttered through James as he suddenly found himself on stage, unprepared to be scrutinized. "Just share from your experiences," he whispered under his breath to Kyle, hoping it would resonate. "Thanks, Dad," Kyle replied, a mix of astonishment and gratitude brightening his face. "Okay, so I've been thinking about how we can use different tools to solve problems, and my dad is going to help us with that today." As James stood up, gripping the edges of the table to ground himself, he scrutinized the faces before him. He could almost taste the tension braided with anticipation, and to calm it, he recalled the lessons they had shared in the workshop. Leaning into the moment, he embraced vulnerability, determined not to falter. "Hey everyone! I want to talk about how we all face our own mechanical failures in life." The words rolled off his tongue more easily than expected, drawing their interest. He plunged into an analogy detailing how each tool represented an aspect of emotional resilience, like hammering out frustrations or using a screwdriver to assist in navigating connections. The eyes watching him absorbed his words, and a new layer of resolve formed around his hesitations. To be an imperfect mentor was more than acceptable. It was human. James felt himself stepping into a place of growth, realizing that his expertise was not solely in mechanics but in mentorship and emotional support. Kyle interjected with questions, bolstering dialogue among his peers. They discussed fears, obstacles, and aspirations, the energy in the room palpable. James watched the interaction unfold, marveling at the way Kyle facilitated the space, confidently keeping everyone engaged. This wasn't a simple classroom, it was a workshop of discovery, where emotional tools were being laid out for examination. But amidst the pride swelling within him, another wave of uncertainty washed over James. Could he keep this momentum alive day after day? He noticed Kyle's focused gaze and wondered whether his son would expect him to be there continually. Each mounting expectation started to bear weight as the meeting wrapped up. Enthusiasm filled the air, yet doubt gnawed at James. "What's next for you in the club?" he asked Kyle, feeling anxiety creeping back as if it were a familiar shadow. Kyle beamed, invigorated by the conversation. "I think we really need to organize how we apply our ideas. I'd love for you to help with that." Caught off guard, James felt the pull of fear versus potential. The very thought sent a tremor through him. He was being thrust deeper into this world of purpose with Kyle, a place where friendship and mentorship collided, and success or failure became not just personal metrics but shared experiences. Could he sustain the momentum? No longer just a spectator, he was being invited into a partnership, a new chapter, where Kyle's vision flourished alongside his. The challenge lay in not only supporting Kyle but confronting his own need for validation. As they left the meeting, James could see the horizon before them, brightly lit and expansive. Yet beneath the warmth of that glow, a flicker of self-doubt remained. There was much to learn, not just about tools and mechanics but about overcoming the emotional hurdles attached to them. In that moment, James grasped that his relationship with Kyle was no longer just about mentorship. It was about navigating together through uncertainty. "What if we plan something bigger for the next meeting?" Kyle suggested, eyes sparkling with ideas. James felt the spark of excitement ignite within him as he realized that in shaping their mutual journey, he may uncover aspects of himself he had long buried. It was time to acknowledge the potential for growth, yet he questioned whether he could rise to the occasion. With that paradigm shift, the real challenge loomed ahead. What would happen when they faced their first real setback? The new week dawned, but James was already feeling the weight of the expectations pressing down on him. As he sat at his cluttered kitchen table, surrounded by papers and unopened bills, his mind strayed too far into the realm of possibility. Kyle's excitement lingered like the scent of freshly brewed coffee, and James wrestled with the creeping fear of not being able to deliver on his son's aspirations. He had informed his boss that he'd need more flexibility at work. He had committed to helping Kyle with the club, but a feeling of impending inadequacy gnawed at him. One meeting had transformed him from a passive observer to an active participant in his son's life, but with that came a burden: the haunting question of his competence. As James prepared for the upcoming meeting, he reflected on how he could help Kyle structure their ideas. He understood that fostering an environment where mistakes were not just tolerated, but embraced was crucial. But what if he were to falter? What if his own insecurities sabotaged the path they were charting together? Days passed in an anxious blur. Every time he encountered Kyle's bright face, he felt buoyed but also burdened by increasing anticipation. They had discussed hosting a workshop where the club's members could express not just their ideas but their fears, their failures, their stories. It was a fantastic idea, yet one that loomed heavy, both for James and Kyle. One evening, a moment of vulnerability struck as they sat piecing together their plan. Kyle's enthusiasm illuminated the dim room, but beneath the surface, James felt a swell of apprehension. "Do you really think everyone would share their stories?" James asked, testing the air. "What if they feel vulnerable?" Kyle paused. "That's the point, Dad. If we can't be real with each other, how can we grow? It's like mechanics, you can't fix something you don't acknowledge is broken." James nodded slowly, absorbing the analogy. Kyle's words resonated deeply, rekindling a sense of purpose within him. He realized that this was more than just a workshop. It was a chance for all of them to confront their vulnerabilities. But would he have the courage to share his own struggles? Would he be able to open the door to his own vulnerabilities, allowing them to forge stronger connections? "Maybe we should start with our own stories," Kyle suggested, eyes glimmering with determination. "You could go first." The sincerity in Kyle's voice flickered a sense of dread inside James. How was he to expose his failures in front of these teenagers? A soft chime interrupted his spiral of thoughts, drawing his gaze to Kyle's phone. The message blinked frustratingly on the screen. "See, they're excited to do this." Kyle shot James a grin, but a flicker of worry passed over his face. "What if I let them down, Dad?" James's heart sank at the echo of his own fears reflected back at him. It was now his duty to help Kyle navigate the darker waters of self-doubt that he himself waded through daily. "If we let each other down, we just get back up again. It's part of the process." With a newfound resolve, James suggested they metaphorically coat their fears in paint, building a failure wall, where each member could write or draw their challenges. It could become a communal canvas, an offering of their struggles commemorated as stepping stones toward growth. As they devised their plan, James sensed a shift even in himself. There was something liberating about embracing their imperfections and fears as pivotal components of their journeys. Yet a heavy tension loomed as they moved closer to execution. What if vulnerabilities lead to deeper rifts rather than uniting them? Determined to confront the task head-on, James eyed the clock, realizing they needed to tackle logistics quickly. "Let us prepare the club members for some candid conversations," he said, feeling a rush of adrenaline pulsing through his veins. But as they wrapped up their brainstorming session, a darker thought crept in. What if this endeavor unearthed buried grievances within the group, tearing apart the unity they sought to foster? As he tucked Kyle into bed that night, James's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. He had ignited a spark of motivation not just in Kyle, but in himself as well. Yet self-doubt loomed larger than ever. "Dad?" Kyle's tired voice broke through the darkness. "You're going to be great at this, right?" James hesitated, weighing his reply. "I'll do my best, buddy," he said, wishing he could believe it fully. As he closed the door softly, he felt the shift in the air, a moment of clarity amidst swirling chaos. Would he transform into the mentor his son deserved, or would he become the very obstacle he feared? The clock ticked on, and with each passing second, James felt the urgency cranking up. Could they truly face their vulnerabilities together and emerge stronger, or was it destined to fracture under the pressure of honest expression? James awoke to the disruptive trill of his alarm, its piercing sound cutting through the fog of restless dreams. He sat up, heart racing, and for a fleeting moment, he considered retreating to the comforting embrace of sleep. The reality, however, loomed large. Today was the day they would present their workshop idea to the club members. With a weary resolve, he fought against the clutches of doubt that threatened to hold him back, and the dim morning light filtering through the curtains, James moved through his routine mechanically. Each action felt delayed, a demonstration of the internal battle raging within. As he poured coffee, the rich aroma struggled to lift his spirits, mirroring the weight he felt pressing on his chest. Standing in front of the mirror while brushing his teeth, he scrutinized his own reflection, searching for signs of strength that he desperately needed. When the moment of truth had arrived, Would he rise to the occasion or falter under the burden of scrutiny? Finally arriving at the community center later that morning, he stood at the entrance for a moment, glancing at the handwritten agenda taped to the door. The workshop. Sharing. Vulnerability. The terms felt like a double-edged sword. He gripped the doorknob, heart thumping as his emotions swirled into a tempest of excitement and fear. Would he truly be able to deliver on Kyle's vision? Inside, voices buzzed with anticipation. He spotted Kyle, vigor radiating from him as he animatedly interacted with the other club members. Instant joy flickered across James's face. That was the spark he wanted to nurture. "Hey, Dad," Kyle beamed, seeing him. "Are you ready?" James was unsure how to respond. The truth was he felt anything but ready. "Let us do it," he forced out, yet the tremor in his voice betrayed him. They gathered in a reserved meeting room. Chairs arranged in a circle had an inviting yet intimate ambience charged with palpable energy. As the members settled in, they split the responsibilities. Kyle, exuding confidence, led with a captivating introduction, explaining their aim to build a safe space for sharing difficulties and learning from one another. James marveled at the ease with which his son connected with the group and felt a twinge of pride. But soon, the gravity of the workshop began to settle in. It was time for James to speak. As the murmurs faded to silence, he focused on their expectant faces. Thoughts raced through his mind, tangling the supportive words he had rehearsed. What if he tripped over his own vulnerabilities? James took a deep breath, summoned every ounce of courage and began to share. "This is about being genuine. I want you all to know that I've struggled with feeling like I'm not good enough," he admitted, staring into the eyes of the youth around him. "I've often let that fear stifle me. But I learned that sharing these fears can create a path towards growth." As confessions were shared, he felt the collective weight of insecurities lift slightly. Each story narrated in that room wove them all together, amplifying the interconnectedness that vulnerability brings. A girl spoke of her anxiety, while a boy shared his failure in a recent sports competition. With each story, James felt an unexpected alignment. Perhaps their vulnerabilities were not just burdens but ties that could strengthen them. Later, when the session transitioned to discussing the concept of the failure wall, a deafening silence descended over the group. James watched Kyle pause with uncertainty as he attempted to volunteer first. James could read the apprehension on Kyle's face, a reflection of the very fears he had shared moments ago. "How about we make it a family thing?" James proposed, voice steadying. "If we share a piece of ourselves, it could open the door for everyone else. What do you say?" In that instant he saw Kyle's eyes light up with a mix of concern and gratitude. Though initially apprehensive, they walked towards the wall together. James picked up a marker, hesitating briefly before writing his own failure, a job loss, and inability to be the father he wanted to be, a surge of vulnerability washing over him as he laid bare a significant part of his life. Kyle followed suit, and soon others began to join in. The wall transformed into a tapestry of struggles, each mark a testament to the shared human experience. As the workshop came to a close, James felt an overwhelming sense of hope amid the raw honesty in the room. It was far from perfect, and insecurities still lurked at the corners of his mind, but for the first time, he felt like he was on the path to becoming the father and mentor he aspired to be. Leaving the community center, James and Kyle exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. They both knew they had crossed a threshold together, yet shadows of doubt still loomed. James understood now that attempting to embrace their imperfections with failures laid bare was only the beginning of a much deeper journey. Just as they reached the car, Kyle asked with earnestness, "Do you think we can do it again, Dad? Host more of these workshops?" James felt a tremor of uncertainty flutter in his gut. Could they truly dismantle the barriers of fear that held them back? Time and again, the question hung in the air, heavy with possibility and trepidation, as they drove away into the soft twilight. Would they remain brave enough to confront their deepest insecurities together? James sat in the driver's seat, hands clenched on the steering wheel as Kyle's question replayed in his mind. Hope danced with uncertainty, making him restless. Would another workshop help them delve deeper into their vulnerabilities, or would it shine a light on uncharted insecurities? As they pulled into their driveway, the weight of the day settled on him yet again. The thrill of breaking down barriers felt rewarding, but the echoes of doubt still loomed. Had he truly made an impact? Had he given Kyle the tools to navigate his own fears? Stepping out of the car, he glanced over at Kyle, who was already rummaging through his backpack, possibly crafting excitement for the next venture. His son's eagerness reflected a confidence James wished he could claim for himself. "Let us talk about what we learned today," James said, trying to mask his vulnerability with an air of mentorship. Kyle paused, a thoughtful look crossing his face before he nodded. "'Kay," he replied, his tone earnest. They found a quiet space on the back porch, the late afternoon sun casting a warm glow over them. "I think sharing those mistakes made it feel like we're not alone in our struggles," Kyle started, the sincerity in his voice endearing. "But I also felt a bit scared when it was my turn. What if no one cared or thought I was weak?" James felt a sharp sting at the revelation, a reminder of his own fears spilling out that day. "That is a valid concern, Kyle. I felt it too. What's important is that by sharing, we create an opening for understanding and support. Sometimes being brave is just showing up and being yourself." Kyle nodded slowly. "Yeah, but for you it wasn't just showing up. You shared your job loss and how it made you feel like a failure as a dad." James winced at the blunt truth. "I didn't I? Does it hurt?" Kyle's gaze was piercing, and James knew his son's insight came from a place of deep understanding. "It does," James confessed, feeling the vulnerability creep in again. But he reminded himself that this was a growth opportunity for both of them. "But it hurts less when I talk about it. Sharing is healing." A lingering silence filled the air, punctured only by the distant sounds of cicadas. James realized this quiet moment was an experiment in vulnerability, a practice he needed to embrace as much as he preached. "Dad, do you think we could create something together for the next workshop?" Kyle's enthusiasm visibly ignited. "Like a way for others to share their stories, but also have a fun way to make it less intimidating?" James's mind began spinning with ideas. "What if we incorporated art like a visual representation of stories? We could create a story quilt where everyone contributes a piece that represents their journey." Ideas blossomed as they spoke, a sense of collaborative energy threading between them. "I love that," Kyle exclaimed, eyes sparkling with inspiration. "It would be like taking our failures and turning them into a beautiful art piece." James's heart swelled with pride. In that moment he recognized his son's creativity as a reflection of their collective growth, a piece of himself he had been reluctant to acknowledge was equally precious. With renewed determination, they brainstormed late into the evening, designing what would become their next workshop. Yet, in the back of his mind, shadows of apprehension circulated. Would the group respond positively? Would he and Kyle's shared initiatives reflect their authenticity? Before they parted ways for the night, Kyle turned to him. "Can we do this together as a team? I feel like we're stronger when we are." James met his son's earnest gaze, realizing this venture wasn't just about the workshop. It was about reinforcing the trust and bond between them. "Absolutely, Kyle. We're in this together," James affirmed, something unshakable building in him. However, deep inside he questioned if he could truly face the upcoming challenges head-on. As Kyle retreated to his room, James couldn't shake off the feeling of impending pressure, a mix of anticipation and anxiety creeping back. Amidst the fledgling excitement for the upcoming workshop, an unsettling thought surfaced. Would he be able to transform their shared vulnerabilities into tools of connection and empowerment, or would the weight of past failures overshadow their accomplishments? Leaving the room behind, uncertainty loomed larger than before. Would they be able to craft something transformative together? Or would the cracks of fear be too deep to mend? As dawn broke, James felt a new energy swirl within him, but it was overshadowed by a gnawing uncertainty. The night had unfolded with countless ideas and plans, yet the daylight brought a clearer perspective on the risks they were about to take. He wondered if their proposed workshop could indeed be a turning point, not just for participants but for himself and Kyle. James brewed coffee, trying to ground himself in the normalcy of daily routines. Each step from the kettle to the table echoed his thoughts. Could he deliver on this vision? As he sipped the steaming cup, Kyle joined him, his expression a mix of excitement and determination. They were partners, yet the weight of expectation bore heavily on James. "Did you think more about the story quilt?" Kyle asked, already reaching for his sketchbook. The boy's enthusiasm was infectious, but James felt a twinge of intimidation. Was he ready to embrace this creative endeavor? Could he really join Kyle in this venture, creating a space for others to explore their vulnerabilities? Absolutely, James replied, trying to muster a convincing tone. We can start by outlining the materials we'll need. As they sketched together, James observed how Kyle's innate creativity spilled onto the pages. Each scribble and doodle complemented the ideas they had exchanged the night before, a perfect balance of whimsy and authenticity. But as they worked, James felt an internal conflict brewing. He needed to acknowledge not just the excitement but the anxiety that clawed at him. He feared being exposed, that his own shortcomings would be part of the fabric they were crafting. What if sharing their own stories didn't resonate? What if past failures seeped through? Dad, I've been thinking, Kyle's voice interjected, pulling James from his spiraled thoughts. What if we created a space during the workshop where we share our pieces first as examples? It might make others feel braver about sharing their own stories. Reluctant to expose himself, James hesitated. The thought of pouring his heart out again felt daunting. That's a great idea, Kyle, but we need to assess how comfortable we feel standing before a group like that. Kyle's eyes narrowed, a serious tone replacing his playful demeanor. But isn't part of the message that we should embrace our fears? If we take that leap together, maybe others will feel more encouraged too. James looked at his son, struck by the undeniable wisdom in his words. Could he be the man Kyle believed him to be? Each of Kyle's insights chipped away at his own doubts, revealing a path toward mutual growth. James felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps being vulnerable alongside Kyle could indeed set the right tone for the entire workshop. I guess you're right, he acknowledged, feeling a stirring of determination swell. But let us make sure we prep ourselves. We need to give our stories the weight they deserve. As they worked through their ideas, a collaborative rhythm developed between them, each idea sparking the next. Kyle's laughter and creativity carved away at James' tension, transforming it into something more constructive than fear. They laid the foundation of what might be a powerful connection not only between them but extending into the hearts of others. Later that week, they gathered materials, fabric, threads, and paints, each piece a symbol of their commitment to authenticity. However, as they stepped into the workshop with their encouraging smiles, James felt another wave of apprehension wash over him. Just as Kyle had urged earlier, would they both truly open up in front of the crowd? What if their raw honesty turned into something far too vulnerable? Standing at the entrance, James caught Kyle's eye, feeling a silent connection. They were embarking on this journey together, regardless of uncertainties. The flicker of doubt was drowned out by the conviction that perhaps this was the moment he had been waiting for, a chance to embrace not just his failures, but the possibility of resilience they might inspire in others. As they prepared to welcome participants, James felt a moment of clarity wash over him. This was not solely about the workshop. It was a step toward redefining his belief in himself. Yet, as he opened the door, a familiar twinge of anxiety knitted itself back in. Could he truly step into this new chapter, free from the chains of his past? The time had come to confront not just the fears they would face together, but also the ones each participant brought with them. It was a fundamental challenge, a decision point that could determine the direction of not just the workshop, but also James' evolving sense of self. The moment of truth loomed, shadows of self-doubt lurking just beyond the horizon. What would it take for him to confront that fear? And what stories would emerge when everyone's vulnerability was laid bare? James stood behind the makeshift podium, the buzz of anticipation filling the room with an electric charge. On the walls, colorful fabric squares hung like vibrant memories waiting to be transformed into a story quilt under the collaborative hands of all present. He felt the warmth of Kyle's hand on his shoulder, a reassuring anchor at that moment of uncertainty. Today marked a turning point not just for the workshop but for his relationship with his son. James took a deep breath, steadying himself as he prepared to share not only their shared vision but a piece of himself. Vulnerability awaited him, beckoning fiercely. And this was the moment he could no longer shy away from the emotional repair he so desperately needed. Welcome, everyone. Today is about exploration, he began, his voice steady yet laced with the tremors of adventure. We're here to create a story quilt, each piece contributing to our collective narrative. And in doing so, we'll explore the beauty hidden within our struggles. He glanced at Kyle, whose eyes sparkled with pride. In that moment, all fears began to dissolve. He was not alone. The realization of this connection solidified his resolve to embrace the power of shared experiences. As participants began to arrive, James and Kyle took turns sharing their own stories, the challenges they faced, the moments of failure, and the lessons learned. Kyle spoke candidly about his fears of inadequacy, provoking murmurs of understanding from the group. James watched the faces of the teenagers transform, resonating with the authenticity of the instance. When his moment arrived, he felt a rush of determination. "I want to share a pivotal moment from my life," he started, the words drenching his nerves with purpose. "I lost my job and it made me feel like a failure as a father. I thought those failures would define me." The silence in the room expanded, showing that every attendee was leaning in, each word connecting them with the pain of hidden struggles. "But what I learned is that it's not about the fall," he continued, "it's about how we rise. I found a way to connect with my son, using my own story to fuel his ambitions." A flicker of understanding ignited within the room. As he spoke, he saw empathy bridging the gaps of uncertainty. He could feel the collective energy shift, and the walls of fear began to crumble, reflecting the unspoken truths they had all carried. James encouraged the participants to reflect on their own struggles, sharing hands-on methods of repairing tools as a metaphor for emotional healing. "We can't shy away from what's broken. It's in acknowledging our challenges that we discover the tools to fix them," he articulated. The workshop turned into a complex tapestry of shared humanity, where participants listened, ventured their voices, and connected through shared truths. Soon the quilt began to come alive, each square containing stories marked with resilience. A point in time when hope felt unreachable, yet they found the resolve to press forward. There was laughter, there were tears, but most importantly, there was healing, each participant forging bonds greater than they had anticipated. At the close of their time together, Kyle pulled his father aside. "You were incredible today, Dad. It felt like you opened a door for everyone." James felt the warmth swell within. His self-doubt had transformed into recognition. "Thanks, buddy. I couldn't have done it without you leading the charge," he smiled, his eyes glimmering with pride. As they stepped outside, golden rays glimmered through the trees, a testament to their successful day. But amid achievement, another layer of personal acknowledgement unfurled within James. He understood now that it wasn't just about guiding Kyle. It was about forging a path of growth together, embracing both victories and vulnerabilities. He achieved a deeper relationship with his son and a newfound sense of self. Through the workshop, he had conquered not just his fears but created something tangible, a legacy alongside Kyle that teams them against whatever comes next. They had demonstrated to each other the significance of vulnerability, and he no longer saw it as a weakness, but as a strength that would only strengthen their bond. James looked back at the gathering retreating, hope scattered among them like seeds ready to grow. He felt a swell of confidence. With every story shared, he had not only proved himself as a mentor but also liberated himself from the chains of failure. And in that moment, James delivered his final affirmation. "The stories that bind us together are so much more than mere expressions of pain. They remind us that growth emerges from understanding each other." Together, they were ready to tackle whatever the future held. With every fulfilled promise of kinship, James stood taller than before, a father reaffirmed through love, courage, and a commitment to shared journeys. Now more than ever, he embraced the truth. Vulnerability bridges connection. It unlocks potential. He clenched Kyle's shoulder, the gentle squeeze affirming this truth. Their adventure had transformed into more than a workshop. It had evolved into a dynamic partnership grounded in authenticity. This was just the beginning. As they drove home, a profound silence enveloped them. Yet there was no need to fill the void, as they both understood the depths they had unearthed. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but James felt ready. What they would tackle next was not just about overcoming fear but embracing the entirety of the journey far beyond imagination, living the tales they would one day immortalize in those colorful fabric swatches. If you connect with growth, transformation, and authentic relationships, then make the choice to honor this journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel, so you do not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these heartfelt narratives alive. Comment your thoughts and theories, sharing what you gleaned from this journey. Share immediately this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this transformative conclusion. You need to support this movement now. Don't wait even one more second.